Hey, this is Lady C, and I want to talk about an experience that happened to me many years ago. And basically, I want to start off by saying that I can really see how people can end up marrying individuals that they really hadn't intended on marrying, and they look back and they try to figure out, wow, how did I get here, right? So anyway, everybody knows that Jehovah's Witnesses are well aware of the fact that, there are not that many marriage partners in the congregation. I'm going to say marriage partners. And the reason why I'm saying so is because just because there's a lot of brothers in a congregation doesn't mean that you want to be married to those brothers, okay? Let's just be honest. Okay, but we do know for a fact that it's mainly the sisters that don't have enough suitable mates because there's generally more sisters than brothers. Okay, you got that, right? Anyway, I'm young, dumb, not knowing what's going on, understanding that you're only supposed to be dating Jehovah's Witnesses. So in my congregation, there were like 0 brothers that was my age that were available to be married because the other brothers in my congregation were younger than me. So I'm out of high school and maybe they're like in the 10th grade or something. So they're younger than I am. Okay, so there's no brothers. So now I'm looking at in a situation where, women, we can be kind of flattered at the fact that somebody is interested in us. And that's just bottom line, okay. At the age I was at, it wasn't like I couldn't pull a man because there were a lot of guys that were interested in me, but they were not Jehovah's Witnesses. So when this brother moved to my congregation from Arizona, he was smitten with me. He was interested in me, and he showed it right away, because he started inviting me over to his grandmother's house, and we only went over there like a couple of times. But then he was really showing an interest in me, right? My dad was really going ballistic because he's like, that guy is not your type of guy, and I know you're not going to marry him. And he was just going on, and my mom was saying, oh, she's not interested in that guy. She's not going to marry him and stuff like that, And even in the congregation, now mind you, this was a Caucasian brother. I am a little black girl, of course. So this one sister in our congregation was going ballistic because she was like, oh, you should stay with your own kind. You should not marry out of your race because you should stick with the races, and she should marry in her race and he should marry in his race and the whole nine. She wasn't feeling it, But the brother, he didn't care. So he was still interested in me, right? And so I let him go places with me sometimes. Well, I think we must have went out maybe like 5 times. This includes me going over to his grandmother's house for dinner a couple of times, him coming over to my house. He went to a wedding with me, to my cousin's wedding. And I think it was like, he went to the airport with me so I could drop my brother-in-law off at the airport. And we went shopping. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you see somebody that's like hanging out with somebody and you know that person, they don't belong together. In this case, it had nothing to do with the races. Bottom line, the guy just was not, attractive for me. I wasn't interested in him like that, but he was interested in me. And we didn't have anything in common. And the only thing that we did have in common was the fact that we were both Jehovah's Witnesses. Okay. Because when my girlfriends saw me at the store, I was shopping in this store called Hudson's. And Hudson's in Detroit was like Macy's, but Hudson's went out of business, so they're no longer out there. But anyway, I was in Hudson's and I was walking around, looking at different clothes and whatnot, And this brother was walking behind me, and every time he walked, his shoes were squeaking, right? And so my girlfriends, supposed to be girlfriends, if they were really my girlfriends, they would have pulled me to the side and say, what's wrong with you, girl? Anyway. So anyway, they were laughing at me, and they later on told me, and they said, what in the world are you doing? This is after I ditched the guy. Okay. Anyway. So, and my brother-in-law was saying the same thing. He was like, where'd you get this guy from? Da, 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 whatever. So bottom line is, after I had gone to this wedding, to my cousin's wedding, there was a sister that I had invited to my house for the weekend, and she went with us to this wedding. And the next morning, she looked at me and she says, Kathy, she said, have you lost your mind? She said, you are not interested in this brother. And, you know, boing, yoing, 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 finally, it's like, I'm coming out of a trance, because it's almost like you're like you're being drugged, or you're like, you know, you're not even thinking. It's like somebody's interested in me. It's a brother, and there's no brothers out here. And it's like, what are you thinking about? I wasn't even really interested in this brother. Not only that, but when he came to my house with a JCPenney catalog, or was it Sears, and he was showing me some rings in this catalog, $34.99, $99.99. And my dad was just going off. You know, my dad wasn't even a witness at the time, right? It was funny. Just looking back on it was just so funny, because it's easy for a woman to be in the congregation and knowing that you're not supposed to be dating anybody outside of the organization. And then there's this one guy that's there, and he's interested in you, and he's like pursuing you. And so it's like, you're trying to be nice and everything, but as he was beginning to, you know, show more interest, I had only known him for like a couple of weeks, and he's already showing me some rings out of a like JCPenney catalog, you know. But it was just really, really scary looking back on it, because it's like, man, you know, wouldn't it have been interesting if I would have married this guy? And I think the really sad thing about it was my uncles and certain other people in our congregation, they were actually saying, oh yeah, he's a nice brother, and all this stuff. And they were trying to they were like encouraging it to the point where you're thinking, well, maybe there is something about this brother that's okay. Looking back on it right now, it's almost the scariest thing in the world that I could have gotten, you know, married to somebody that I really was not compatible with at all. And here is the big one. Do you know what happened after I told the brother, you know, that there's no need for him to keep coming around because I was not interested in him? 6 months later, I kid you not, I met JT. Now, can you imagine JT coming to town to my congregation and meeting little old me, and I'm hooked up with the wrong brother? That is scary. That is very scary. So anyway, I just wanted to say this because I feel like there's a lot of people in the congregation, and, you know, there is just this one lone brother or sister or whatever you want to call it, and you are being pursued by this person, and you know you're not interested in that person. And for some reason, you're like animal going to the slaughter to the altar with this person that you know you're not interested in. And that is actually the way I feel that could have happened to me if my girlfriend Kim, I don't know where Kim is to this day, but if I could locate and find her, I will be giving her the biggest kudos in the world, because it always takes that one person that is not afraid to stand up and say, look, girl, you need to look and see that this is the right thing that you're doing. But it just looking back, it's just like I said, the only thing we had in common was the fact that we were Jehovah's Witnesses. And I later found out that when he lived in Arizona, he was also trying to marry a sister there. And my dad said, I told you, he was going to all these congregations and trying to get people married before they found out what kind of person he was. And that's the way my dad felt about it, is that he was just trying to get somebody married off because he didn't want them to see the real him and everything. So anyway, bottom line is, you know, me and JT, you know, we eventually got married. And whenever we would go back to that congregation to visit, that brother would sit in the Kingdom Hall, because he wasn't married at the time. He would sit in the Kingdom Hall and turn his back and look at me and JT with the ugliest, sternest look on his face. It was almost like, you took my woman. Man, you took my woman. I mean, it was just so uncomfortable being there in the congregation and just sitting there with somebody just looking at you like, oh God, you know, you didn't know if this guy was mentally stable or not. Anyway, I'm just so glad that's over. That's a part of my past and a road that I did not go down. And for all of you lurkers, I mean, seriously, ladies, I have heard so many women talk about bad relationships and bad marriages and how they were, you know, victims of domestic abuse. And just to show just how quickly this guy was trying to marry me and I didn't know anything about him, and as well as he didn't know anything about me, that you could have gotten involved with someone and I could have easily been the victim of domestic abuse myself, because it seemed like that guy would have been very, like territorial just by the way he was acting, even after I married somebody else, So for those of you who are lurking or people that are even in this situation right now, know that you can get help, know that you can get out of these relationships, and also know that God has nothing to do with you leaving or staying. Don't look at yourself and say, oh, Jehovah wants me to stay married to this man. No, he doesn't. Jehovah has nothing to do with this in terms of you getting out of a bad relationship. And I have heard so many other stories about how brothers, their wives would die and they'd be married 30 days later. How can you be married to somebody for 20 years and then she dies and now you're married to somebody else 30 days later? Come on, people. So you can really see that the Jehovah's Witnesses are kind of warped in their thinking when it comes to this type of thing. Anyway, I just want to come out and share this experience with you to hope that it will touch someone's life and be able to help them for the good. This has been Lady C. Thank you so much for tuning in.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.